Hi everybody, so I know I haven't made a video in over a month now, and that wasn't willful. Between traveling and classes really picking up, I haven't had as much time to film these vlogs and edit them, but I'm hoping to get back on track now for my last month and to make a couple videos to make up for the last month that I missed. And these next couple videos probably won't be as typical because it's a big recap. And as I noted in my last video, starting towards the end of October, I had a trip to Berlin, which is going to be the topic of this week's video. And that was during the first part of my fall break. So we left on Saturday, October 17th, to go to Berlin. And that was a nice train ride, not very eventful. And once we got there, we unpacked, went grocery shopping, and then uh, met to go out to eat to a really nice restaurant. And then that was pretty much Saturday, not very eventful. And then on Sunday is when the trip really began. And this entire trip was planned with or by my program, which was very great. We stayed in a great apartment, or great apartments, I should say, in Berlin. And it was a really great experience. And to start off with a recap on that Sunday, we did first a self guided tour through the city, and that was done by each of us having assigned in pairs, each of the students assigned in pairs, a topic about the city or an important person or an important place. And it was a neat way to do a general tour of the city rather than listening to a tour guide, that we were able to take part in it. And then after that, we went to the Brandenburg Tor, which is one of the most famous, or in English, the Brandenburg Gate. It's one of the most famous landmarks in Germany. I'm sure you've seen a picture of it. And here's a picture of me with my friends in front of the Brandenburger Tor. And it was really surreal to see because I've been learning about it as long as I've been learning German, and I actually had to do a presentation on it in high school. So it was definitely a cool landmark to see. And then after that, we made our way to the Reichstag, which is the parliamentary building for the German government, and we had our own tour inside of that as well. Um, and as soon as funny stories, when we walked in, I we started our tour, and maybe 10 feet from the entrance, there are these glass doors that go to another room, and I looked in it, and I was just noted to myself that yeah, it looked like a nice conference room. It wasn't massive or anything, but I thought, oh yeah, that'd be a nice place to have a conference or a little convention. But it turned out that was the main parliamentary room for the building, and that I was taken aback by that. But it was still a really nice building, and we took a tour through it all. And once we got to the top, we went inside the parliamentary building on the observation decks, and so we were able to see. We actually be inside the building where they um, conducted their business. And here's a picture of me inside. I was pretty impressed by, or I was not maybe impressed. I was happy that we were able to go inside and actually see the room itself. And after that, we went to the top of the Reichstag where you can look at the entire city. And so that was a nice place to be. And then afterwards, my friends and I took this picture outside of the Reichstag because we thought it was funny. And maybe, I don't know, I'm laughing because I think it's funny, but maybe you don't. And then from there, well, after our tour at the Reichstag, we had a pretty much free time. So I went with a small group of people to the East Side Gallery, which is the longest remaining section of the Berlin Wall. And today, it's a place of art. They have tons of different murals all over this wall. And here's a picture of me in front of one of them. And it was just crazy to see this symbol of division turn into a big piece of artwork. And actually, I think I read the news that someone wanted to knock it down and put luxury apartments or luxury housing there, which seems like an awful idea, but I guess that's life. But I hope they don't do that. And then on Monday, we went to the Jewish Museum to start off with our program, and it wasn't a Holocaust, just a Holocaust museum. And I think that's important to note that there's more to Jewish history than just the Holocaust. And the building was actually set up very interestingly. I recommend going to it if you ever go to Berlin. It one we start off in the basement, and it shoots off in different hallways, and these hallways represent different time periods for the Jews. And it's interesting that it's not super parallel and straight lines that you in perpendicular hallways that you might expect in a typical modern building, and it's really to represent the um, complex history of the Jews and the constant moving around that many of them had to face. And two of my favorite exhibits that we saw was one was the Garden of Exile, and the second was the Holocaust Tower. And here's the picture of the Garden of Exile. It's kind of hard to maybe understand just from a picture, but pretty much what it is it's a um, concrete, maybe concrete, I don't know, platform or not platform, but it's a concrete area that's kind of tilted, and then also shooting up from it are concrete pillars. And it doesn't sound like much, but actually when you walk through it, it's really hard. Not really hard, but it's difficult to walk through because you stumble based on how your eyes catch the tilted ground versus the parallel um, uh, concrete pillars. And I thought it's a really interesting way to represent how somebody might feel in exile, really out of place and not be able to get their bearings. And then the last thing we did at the museum was visit the Holocaust Tower, which I'm not going to show a picture of because I don't think you can't. The only way you can experience it is actually going inside of it. And there's these big doors that you go through this to get into the Holocaust Tower, and you just stand there, and it's just this massive concrete tower that's cold and dark and completely silent, and you can only see um, a little a little window of light at the very top, and it was just a really powerful way to get a feeling to remember the Holocaust. And I don't think the Holocaust can ever be 100% memorialized necessarily, but I thought it was an interesting way to give you a feeling of destitution. And then from there, once again, we had our own free time. So I went with my friends to Checkpoint Charlie, which I think everyone's heard of. And it was kind of funny to see the representations of the U.S. soldiers there, which clearly weren't U.S. soldiers. And you could see how they were holding their U.S. flag and had to shake your head because a real U.S. soldier or U.S. Marine would never hold a flag like that. But I guess that's just me being a patriotic American. And then from there, we went to Haus der Wannsee Conference, which is this, I guess you call it a villa or a manor, a little bit outside of Berlin. And it's a beautiful, beautiful manor, but it's crazy to think that such a beautiful place, something so evil could be planned there, because that was where the Holocaust was basically planned out, the final solution by the Nazi regime. And by I thought it was a very powerful museum because they turned it into a museum now. And at the very end of the museum, they had these quotes and from Holocaust survivors and the children of Holocaust survivors, and even the children of uh, Nazi guards. And I think when we talk about the Holocaust, we never really talk about the aftermath of the Holocaust. So it was interesting to hear these perspectives of what happened after the Holocaust and how it wasn't only the Jews that were affected, it was also Germans who were affected by the aftermath, of course. And then on Tuesday, we started off by going as a group to the Norris Museum, which not much to mention there. It's just a history museum. We talked a lot about the architecture. And from there, we went to these two memorials. We went to multiple memorials, but the one that struck me the most was this memorial for the book burning that occurred during the Nazi regime. And it's just this little plaza, and they have this very small glass window that's actually in the ground. And when you stand on top of it and look in, all you see are empty bookcases, which I thought was an incredible way to represent the book burning. And it was really interesting. And then after that, we were free to do what we wanted again. So I went with my friends to a museum that had a lot of Picasso paintings. I'm not huge on art, but it was very neat to see these Picassos. And then from there, I went with John and Haley, other people in my group, to Schloss Charlottenburg, which is a palace in Berlin, and absolutely magnificent. I think it's my favorite palace that I visited. Sorry. It's I think my favorite palace that I've visited so far during my time abroad. It's just beautiful inside. You're actually not supposed to take pictures. I didn't know that until a little bit after we did an audio tour, but here's a picture of us on the outside with some other friends, and definitely really cool estate all around, and I would visit it again if I went back to Berlin. And then on Wednesday, we had the entire day free except for the evening. So I went with a couple of friends to the Sachsenhausen concentration camp. Not the most well known concentration camp, but it was really massive. And I'd never been to a concentration camp, so a new experience to me, very sobering, of course. You can't even put into words how um, sad a place like that is. And one of the most interesting exhibits that I saw there um, was right next to the actual concentration camp was this kind of memorial area. It was kind of a wooded area, but it had memorials and graves, and it's spread throughout this area. They had these little speakers that you couldn't see, but it was people giving their accounts of what happened in the concentration camp in different languages, and it was really eerie, but also um, I don't know if humbling is the right word, but it was amazing to hear these accounts, and it was well done in the sense that you could hear this one account, but you also hear in the distance another account of what they saw, and very powerful, I thought. And then from there, we went to the Alton National Gallery, which is the old National Gallery, and it had a lot of paintings. By German painters, which interesting to see. Like again said, art's not my favorite, but we went, and I'm glad we did. And here's a picture of us on the outside, in the inside of the museum. And then after that, we went to the Philharmonics, which is the main orchestra symphony for Berlin. I think it's world famous, but it was very beautiful music. I was a little sleepy during it, but I'm glad we went, and uh, I think that's some part of the culture is to experience that. So I'm glad we did it. And then on Thursday, my last day in Berlin, we went to Potsdam first, which is a little city outside of Berlin. And the first thing we saw is the Glienicke Bridge, which is well-known bridge for the Soviets and the Americans exchange spies from the Cold War. And I think they also filmed a movie there, so it was an interesting part of Potsdam to see. And then from there, we went to Schloss, which was where they housed the Potsdam Conference, which is where the Americans, not for a history lesson, but for the Americans, Brits, and the Russians decided what to do with Germany after the war. And it wasn't the most amazing castle or palace, but it was really beautiful from the outside. And since it's such a historical since it has such historical significance, I'm glad that we visited it. And then from there, we went to Sans Souci, which is French for without worries, I hope. And I think that's what it means, yeah, without worries, or Hakuna Matata, however you want to say that. And there we saw, no, not there, it's an entire palace, but it's a palace built by Frederick the Great, and it's modeled after a palace of Versailles in France, and we saw the grave of Carl the Great, Frederick the Great. Sorry, Frederick, I butchered your name. Frederick the Great, and his grave is there too. And people put potatoes on top of it because apparently he brought potatoes to the German people, and they're happy about that. And also his dogs are buried right next to him, which I thought was interesting. But back to the palace, it's absolutely incredible when you round this corner. It comes out of nowhere, and it's just this massive estate and this beautiful building. We didn't go inside, but I heard it's not really special inside, so I'm not worried about that. But one of the most magnificent sights I've ever seen, which sounds dramatic, but definitely very cool and noteworthy. And I'm glad that that's how we ended our trip. I thought it was really appropriate ending to end Berlin at such a cool place. But one of my favorite memories from just this Berlin trip in general was spending time with my friends in our apartment in the evenings, where we were just able to hang out, and we made dinner a couple nights, which I'm surprised we pulled it off because I'm not really as good a cook as they are, but we made some really great food, and it was definitely good times. And I think this is a trip that I won't forget in my life, which once again sounds really over dramatic, but it was definitely a cool trip and worthwhile. And from here, I flew to Rome, where I met up with my friend Jordan, and then we also went to Athens, Greece, which I'll talk about in my next video. So thank you for watching this one. I'm sorry for giving a bunch of videos at once, but I'm trying to make up for the time that I lost. So thanks for watching.